This is Dominato here to talk about my song Glitch. And firstly, thank you so much for your interest in this song and your wonderful questions that you presented to me and got me thinking and created a whole sort of process of reflecting on the song. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I appreciate very much Mrs. Rachelle Gonzales for prompting that. So shout out to all of you. Thank you. Lots of questions, but they kind of boil down into a couple of important areas. So I'd like to start with the lyrics of the song because a lot of people were interested in that. And I'll just do a reading of the lyric and we can talk a bit about it after. I have a little glitch in my heart, a door that opens into the dark. I can't get around the looming disaster, no how. It's such a fascination, a sweet, tragic cola. Buy me one, I'll owe ya, way, way how. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. I have a little glitch in my heart, a window that brings me to the stars. Such a funny thing trying to explain it. Oh yeah. It's all hidden in plain sight. It whispers to me, sometimes it lies, but it's never without its moment. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. I have a little glitch in my heart. I'm falling through the words. So that's the lyric to the song. And I suppose where I was coming from by the time I got to the lyrics, because in answer to another question, it was the music that started first, but always it goes back and forth. Some passage in the music comes out, some phrase of the music, and then a phrase of the lyric comes out in response, and then they feed back and forth across to each other. So the first phrase that came out was, I have a little glitch in my heart. And I suppose when I started getting into the lyric, I was thinking of the self, because I'm very psychologically, philosophically minded, and I have been for my whole life. I was thinking about the self as a house, and often that's how we dream. When we dream of ourself, we dream of a house. And of course a house has doors and windows and different floors. And all of those things, if you read, Carl Jung or somebody like Carl Jung, I guess like BTS is big on Carl Jung these days, and I have been big on Carl Jung since I was a teenager also. So I'm thinking in terms of doors and windows, and I'm also thinking of magic. Magic is something that I've read and studied the history of for many, many years. And it comes down to, in my study of it, an ancient idea which is in all cultures around the world. And it's the idea of mana, that is the bread from heaven. And it's mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in Buddhist scriptures, it's mentioned in the Hindu scriptures, it's mentioned in, references all over the world to a substance which unites the inner world and the outer world and has a power to it. And we can think of that mana really as imagination and as art. Art is mana, a kind of mana. So in thinking about the lyric, I have a little glitch, a little hiccup, a little thing that doesn't seem right in myself, in my heart. But it also is a power, it's a magic power. A window that brings me to the stars, or a door that opens into the dark. So I wanted to combine sort of darkness and light, because that creates drama in anything, in a play. Shakespeare, I'm not comparing myself to Shakespeare, but Shakespeare, I learned from Shakespeare, always combines darkness and light. Leonard Cohen, a great Canadian songwriter and poet, in every line of his poetry, there's always an alternation between darkness and light. And these two things rather, are playing off each other, often to create a third. How does that relate to mana? You think about that. So, the self is a house. It has doors and windows. We have glitches. We have things we don't like about ourselves, but maybe they turn out to be ways of understanding the world, ways of understanding other people. So that's kind of where I was coming from with the lyrics. And I won't say more than that, but you can go back and take a look at them. The lyrics are actually posted on YouTube Music. So if you find the song through music.youtube, the companion lyrics are there. There are questions about instruments, and I wrote the song, I discovered it, really as a keyboard type of a thing. With my recording package, I get to plug in a little keyboard, and I'm not really a keyboard player, but I certainly, I know where a few notes are. And the bass line was the first thing that I came up with, that came to me. And basically the bass line, the instrument there is the keyboard, but patched into a vintage synthesizer from the 80s, a Casio synthesizer that bands like Depeche Mode used, and I downloaded and purchased that patch. So that sort of bass line is the synthesizer, and all the synthesizer sounds on the song are me fooling around on this keyboard through that vintage synthesizer on Ableton Live, which I'll say more about later. So instrumentations, of course, there is a guitar part, and Steve pointed that out as a guitar player. He liked that, the lead of the song, and so that's guitar, of course my voice, and I'll say more about that in a moment too. And then there are some samples from sample libraries, and I'll say more about the beats in a moment. But let me go back to the voice. The movement of the song is essentially the intervals are A natural minor. So it starts off in A, descends to G, descends to F, and then descends to D. So the intervals there, A to G, that's a tone, G to F, that's a tone, but F to D, that's a tone and a half, or what they call a minor third. So that's the basic sort of verse structure of the song. I have a little glitch in my heart, a door that opens into the dark. I can't get around the looming disaster, no how. It's such a fascination, a sweet tragicola. Buy me one, I'll owe ya, way, way how. And then for the chorus part, we go back to the E. Well, we introduce E, we haven't been to E yet. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. Let's pretend it's not really messed up. So the chorus part is the E, G, F. So all of those intervals are in the A natural minor scale. But the chords that I'm playing aren't minors, they're all major chords. So in answer to the question, what key is the song in, I have to say, I'm not sure. And I've asked at least 3 people, my wife who's a piano teacher and knows music much more than I know music, because I'm a bit of a dum-dum when it comes to music in terms of knowing notes and theory and all of that kind of stuff. and Mr. Dranlow and Mrs. Gonzales, and that's not even to say that they wouldn't know or couldn't know. It's just it wasn't obvious. It's not a song that has an obvious key, except that the lead is in A minor, A natural minor. So that is in A minor, but it's the mix of the minor and the major that I think is intriguing. And I didn't really know that when I was writing the song. That was all intuitive. I didn't know that I was writing a song that had this mix of major and minor. And it kind of fit with the dark and the light and the kind of the magical notion that I wanted to put into the song. But the other important thing that one of you pointed out very well is that the singing is in octaves. So I'm going, there is a little glitch in my heart. There's a little glitch in my heart. I'm singing an octave above that too. There is a little glitch in my heart. A door that opens into the dark. I can't get around a looming disaster. Know how. So those two voices, I recorded them separately, obviously, and put them together in Ableton, and they give that that cool sound of the low and the high. Again, mixing, the high and the low, the dark and the light, the major and the minor. That's creating drama, I think, tension in the song. So beats, a lot of people mention beats, and do I program my own beats? Well, combination. I mean, nowadays with beat-oriented music, most producers and writers are building on stuff that's given to them, from sample libraries and patches and loops that they purchase or get. And I purchase most of my loops through Lander. That's landr.com, so that they give you the rights to the music so you can use it in your own songs, and you don't have to pay royalties thereafter. You buy it legally and you use it. But having said that, you download loops and then you mess them up. You cut out this part of it and you want to use that part of it, or in an editor you move the beats around a little bit. And in Ableton, that's all made very easy. You can do that very easily in a program like Ableton Live, which is set up to do that. And the syncopation in this part, let's pretend it's not really messed up. So there's a funny story where it goes, there's like a little syncopation in the beat, which some of you noticed. And a good friend of mine, who I've known for years and years, here's a picture of him and I back in grade 12 playing a concert for our high school. Out in front there are hundreds of screaming fans. Anyway, so that's Kenneth and I. And when I shared the song with Kenneth, he came back and said, I like the twangy guitar and also how you gave your vocals a greater emphasis in the mix. It took me 3 listens, he said, to accept the change in beat that occurs when you sing Let's Pretend It's Not Really Messed Up. Initially, I found it too jarring and out of place, but I ultimately understood the fit. So that's cool. So that's the beats part of it. And some people were wondering about inspiration. And I see I'm going on to almost 15 minutes, but hopefully this is interesting for you. Anyway, it's interesting for me. So the inspiration, there's a television show on Netflix called Dark, and the title track of that show is by a band called Apparat, and the song I believe is called Goodbye. And they also included this notion of double singing, octave singing. I've always loved octave singing. And the octave, of course, is apart from the root, just singing monotone or the mono line. The octave singing is the fundamental, like octaves are the fundamental of music, right? The fourths, the fifths, all of the intervals come from the overtone series, which is octaves, right? So octave singing has always really appealed to me, a male voice and a female voice in particular, singing an octave apart from each other. Same notes, but just singing an octave apart. Sounds very simple, but I love it. So in this song, we'll listen to a bit of it. Here it is. So there's a woman and a man singing there. So I love the feel of that, and I watched 3 seasons of the show, whatever, years ago, and that feel of the song stuck with me. So I was inspired by that. I didn't realize that initially when I started the song, but that came up in the midst of doing it. And just a couple of final things on tools. So I started recording my own music. I have played in bands since I was 13, in high school, playing the Battle of the Bands in Windsor where I grew up, and played in lots of different bands in Windsor and in Toronto, and played in clubs and so forth when I lived in Toronto, along Queen Street. And I started taking my recording seriously, I guess it would have been around 1990. And I started on something like that. Well, I didn't start on that. This was a big upgrade. This was the Ableton Live of its day. It's a 4-track tape recorder which takes standard cassette audio tape, but it allows you to record multiple tracks, and then later you can bounce those tracks down onto an empty track, or you can destructively overwrite a track that you already have if you're really sure that what you're doing is what you want. So I started working on this thing, and I learned a lot about recording from that experience. Nowadays I use Ableton Live, which is a piece of software. You can look it up, a German company. It's fantastic for blending DJ style mixing. Like, you can just drop loops into it and it automatically syncs the tempo of the loops, like, on the fly. And it's just a really cool way to test out ideas. And then, but it also has a standard kind of linear recording interface as well, which Logic Pro, the Apple version of that, has done in their most recent version of Logic Pro. They've kind of taken the cue from Ableton Live and have moved to that platform also, where you can do DJ style on the fly things with standard multi-track recording. So I encourage all of you who are musically interested to do some recording and write some music. Mrs. Gonzales, I know, gets you sort of scoring things out, and I've heard some fantastic results over the years of student music, and it's just such a wonderful process and a wonderful way to share your music with other people and get inspiration and so forth. So I hope, I'm just looking at my piece of paper, I think I've covered everything that I want to cover for this song, Glitch, and appreciate your listens, And wherever you're listening, share it out. You know, an artist, songwriter like myself always likes an audience and wants to know that people are listening to the music. So the album is Pan Electric by Dominato. Thank you so much.